Okay, this week we are going to deal with tables. We're going to have a little table talk. When working with tables, one of the things that I recommend is that you always show your hidden characters. It'll better help you to be able to create tables, and you'll know exactly what's going on, where how many columns you're going to have, how many rows you're going to have. So it's very important to show your hidden characters. So in this first video, we're going to discuss creating tables. We're going to talk about converting text to tables, adding and deleting rows, and adding and deleting columns. All right, so let's first talk about creating tables. Basically, there are two ways you can create tables. The first way is you can actually insert a table, and the second way is that you can convert text to tables. So let's start with the first way, which is inserting a table. And also, another little sidebar is that when you're working with the contents of a table, you need to use the type tool. All right, you will use the type tool. For about 90% of what you do in a table will happen with the type tool. Okay, so we're going to start with inserting a table. We have our cursor in this top text frame right here. We're going to go up to tables and we'll drop down to insert table. By default, you're going to get this dialog box right here, and typically it starts you off with 4 rows and 4 columns. So let's just keep that in place and we'll say OK. So as you can see, we have a default setting here, 4 rows and 4 columns. All right, now once you've inserted your table, you have quite a few options. You can scale them, you can open them up, you can do all kinds of things with them. But right now, this is our default setting. So the first thing you want to do is let's talk about how you can actually open this up, how we can change the height of the rows in this table. So let's say, for example, in the type tool, when we mouse over any one of these lines within the table, you're going to see a double arrow. When you mouse over the horizontal lines, if you mouse over the vertical lines, you'll see a double arrow. And what that means now is you're ready to actually manipulate this table. So let's start by opening this table up. If I just put my cursor over the bottom row, that last line under the bottom row, click and drag, you can see that I've just opened up the bottom row. All right, now, if you do the same thing and put your finger on the Shift key, you will open it up proportionately. All right, so that's one thing that you can do with the Shift modifier key as you open and close your tables. Now, that's the first way, basically inserting a table. All right, if we want to preview this, you click off, hit the letter W, and you can see what that looks like. So let's bring it back. So that's the first way. Now let's talk about converting text to table. If you notice, there's a cell underneath, all right, and it has name, address. But between the name and the address, there's a tab key. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to do a Command A. So I select this text. Then I'm going to go up to table, and then I'm going to drop down to it says Convert Text to Table. All right, and at this point, you're going to see it's going to, by default, the column separator, or it is also known as a delimiter, is a tab key. You can change that to almost anything you want, okay? But typically it's a tab key, and your row separator or your row delimiter is your paragraph return. And again, you can also change that as well. So that's why it's very important to have your hidden characters shown. So we say, okay, we want the column separator to be a tab, we want the row separator to be paragraph return, we say okay, and there you have it. And once again, if I just click and drag the bottom line, all right, it'll just open up that bottom row. However, if I put my finger on the Shift key, click, Shift, and drag, now it's going to open it up proportionally. So that's how we can actually create a table and then convert text to table. Okay, next up we're going to talk about adding and deleting rows and columns. First, let's talk about how you can actually select the contents of a table, being the rows, the columns, and actually the individual cells. So first, let's talk about selecting the rows. Remember, when you're in the Type tool, if you're in the Type tool and you just if you just mouse slightly outside to the left, you'll notice a down arrow. If you mouse slightly to the top, you'll see, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, to the side, you'll see a side arrow. To the top, you see a down arrow. And if you mouse in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a diagonal arrow. Well, let's talk about the side arrow. The side arrow is going to select the row. All right. Of course, the down arrow selects the column. Okay. And then the corner arrow will select the entire table cells. Okay, great. Now, let's say you just want to select just the individual cell. If you just click and drag, you'll be able to select one cell. If you click drag, you can select however many cells you want in whichever order you want. All right, so that's how you can select cells. Now, another way you can select cells is you can put your, if it's a very small cell, if you have your cursor in the cell you want to select, you put your finger on the shift key and you can press the arrow down and that will select the actual cell itself. So that's how you can select rows, columns, and the entire table. So let's talk about deleting. Very, very easy. So let's say, for example, we want to get rid of the third column. All right, you would just put the arrow over the third column. All right, you would go up to table and you drop down to delete column. And as you can see, that column is deleted. Now, it just so happens that all the columns are identical, so it just looks like it's just one less column, and that is true. So let's say, for example, if I want to delete the third row, what I'll do is I'll type in the number 2. It's the third row. I'll type in number 3. So let's say I want to get rid of the third row. I put my mouse over to the side, select that row, go up to table, say delete, and I'll say delete row. And as you can see, that row is gone. Okay? And the same way that you would delete rows and columns is the same way you would add rows and columns. So let's say, for example, if I want to add a row, I would actually select that row, go up to tables, and I would say insert, I would say row, and yes, I want to select, and it'll give you the option to say, well, where do you want, how many rows you want, and where do you want to position it? Well, of course, in this case, I want to go below. I want one row below the row that I just selected. I say OK, and there it is. And likewise with the column. I select the column that I want, and then I can say OK, table. I would say insert column, and I can say give me one to the right, and I'll say OK. So now you can see how you can actually add and delete rows and columns.